Good afternoon, and welcome to the 2018 induction to the Hall of Fame, Legends and Leaders of the Blindness Field. In the interest of full disclosure, I must let you know immediately that I am wearing the same outfit that I wore several years ago when I moderated the induction. Now that is because I'm retired, and you only need one or two professional outfits when you retire. But it's also part of a personal conspiracy to convince others that it's time to retire, so they get to hang out in cargo pants and t-shirts like I do. And look how well it's worked. We've got Mike, Bina, Bob, Lou, Tuck, Carl, Kay, Diane. I'm really making progress in this conspiracy. And many others are stepping aside now to let new leaders develop. And among these new leaders, some will be Hall of Fame inductees of the future. Think about that. But we are here today to recognize our two new inductees, Dr. Susan J. Spungin Hankey and Frank Haven Hall. Coming back to APH always feels like coming home, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate. A politician and civil liberties activist named Marcus Garvey once said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. As a field, our roots have been strengthened and extended, and our growth has been developed by the Hall of Fame." A little bit of history. The Hall of Fame was born in 1999 when four wise gentlemen took action after a conversation with colleagues. The group was concerned that many new professionals were unaware of the people who shaped our rich history. In 1999, Mike Nelipovich and Rod Cosick of Wisconsin Rehabilitation Services, John Maxon of Mississippi State University, and Dean Tuttle of University of Northern Colorado advocated through several Heroes and Pioneers presentations the need to recognize the leaders and the innovators in our field. They created poster-sized images of 32 selected heroes, which they housed at AER headquarters. The posters, not the heroes. And they shared at AER conferences. The recognition of these heroes became the catalyst for the Hall of Fame for Leaders and Legends of the Blindness Field, which was formally established in 2001 at the 133rd annual meeting of APH. Those 32 heroes became the first members inducted into our hall. Like most new homes, this one required more work and planning than anyone would have dreamed. I begin the slides with the now legendary empty room photo from 2002, in which APH personnel Don Keefe, Bob Brasher, Janie Blome, Gary Mudd, and Will Evans stand near a window between two pillars on a hardwood floor. There is nothing in the room but them. Next. The creation of the hall was announced in the 2002 APH In Touch newsletter. An exciting new initiative is underway at APH, establishment of the Hall of Fame for Leaders and Legends of the Blindness Field. Next. Now, 17 years later, that room is filled with the memories of the most exceptional contributors to the blindness profession. The bas-relief plaques for each of the 60 inductees, soon to be 62, are mounted on kiosks throughout the room. The wall of tribute, which contains names of people who have been individually honored by friends of the hall, is visible on the back wall. And that potted plant in the foreground may soon have to sacrifice its place to a future kiosk. In the next photo, the people that you see seated were among the original 32 living legends inducted into the Hall of Fame as extraordinary leaders. They include, from left, Ruth Carlella, Samuel Ashcroft, Natalie Barriga, Cleo Dolan, Eleanor Fay, Louis Vicelli, Alice Raftery, Stanley Saturco, and Don Wiedewer. If you would really like a treat, make time to watch the video of the 2002 induction instead of watching Netflix some night. Phil Hatland served as the moderator, and it was moving to hear his moderation as well as the personal reflections. Although I'll have to say that my favorite comment was Eleanor Fay saying that she was really hoping she was going to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. But, okay, next. Without the dedication of staff at APH, the Hall of Fame would not have become a reality. Bob Brasher and Janie Blome continue to serve as co-curators, and they are the heart and the soul of the work to maintain the hall. It's a myth that Bob has retired. I think he just shifted his energy into volunteer efforts with the Hall of Fame, and they have both done a wonderful job. Appreciation to them. Next slide. The exceptional talent of Andrew Dakin has provided lasting images of our inductees that can be enjoyed both tactually and visually by visitors to the hall. And is Andrew here today? Do you know? Is Andrew here? Andrew Dakin? No, he's not with us today. Often he's able to come. But we want to acknowledge and appreciate his commitment to quality in crafting these beautiful plaques each year. Next. Mm-hmm. In housing the Hall of Fame, APH has provided a lasting gift to our field. Each year, the hall includes something new, biographies in audio or print, new photos, and memorabilia. Next. As former chair of the governing board, I acknowledge and appreciate the work that goes into the nomination process and the annual decision of whom to select as inductees. Thank you especially to the current members, particularly the officers, Roseanne Silberman as chair, Marge Kaiser, who's with us here. Where are you, Marge? Okay, there she is at the front table. Ann Wadsworth as treasurer, Greg Goodrich as past chair, and Jim Daramek, who has been a long-term member of the board, who's done an extraordinary job of supporting fundraising, as well as developing and interpreting policy. And Jim's over here. There he is, over there. Thank you, Jim. And Chair Roseanne Silberman deeply regrets that she couldn't be here to celebrate the outcomes of her committee's hard work. However, her granddaughter's bat mitzvahs are taking place this weekend, and it's one of the few reasons for an excused absence for participation. And then we have other members that you'll see printed on the slide. Frances Mary DeAndrea, and FM is here. And thank you, FM. And BJ Lejeune, Bill Weiner is here with us. Thank you, Bill, for your work. George Zimmerman, Greg Goodrich, and Janie, of course, and Bob, the two heart and soul of the Hall of Fame. Okay, and just a reminder before we get to the real fun, that this is a good time. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay. This is a good time to consider nominating people for the upcoming year. Please consider these criteria and make time to recognize an extraordinary leader in the field by submitting your nominations. They close on April 30th, 2019, but it's not too early to prepare and submit nominations. And according to the guidelines that you'll find under nominations on the Hall of Fame website. I would also like to remind you that the Hall is supported by donated funds. We welcome donations either through honoring a friend or colleague on the Wall of Tribute or by a direct donation to the Hall to support the costs of the plaques and informational media. Please take the time to read the back of your program, which provides detail on how to contribute. Thank you so much for helping to keep our history alive. And now comes the fun. Okay. That moment of panic when you think you've lost the key piece of paper. Okay, our first 2018 inductee to the Hall of Fame is Frank H. Hall. I'll describe his accomplishments a little, but I first want to know the one way in which he is unique, because he's the first person named Hall to be inducted into our hall. It was meant to be. Several years ago, I read a book called The Devil in the White City, Eric Larson's story of the Chicago World's Fair of 1893 and a crime associated with that era. As I was enjoying the author's description of the exhibits at the World's Fair, I was surprised to read the following paragraph. Frank Haven Hall, superintendent of the Illinois Institution for the Education of the Blind, unveiled a new device that makes plates for printing books in Braille. Previously, Hall had made a machine capable of typing in Braille, the Hall Braille Writer, which he never patented because he felt profit should not sully the cause of serving the blind. As he stood by his newest machine, a blind girl and her escort approached him. Upon learning that Hall was the man who had invented the typewriter that she used so often, the girl put her arms around his neck and gave him a huge hug and a kiss. Forever afterward, whenever Hall told the story of how he met Helen Keller, tears would fill his eyes. To me, this vignette reveals the essence of Frank Hall. He was a skilled inventor, but also a humanitarian and educator. Born in Maine, he served briefly in the Civil War before pursuing a college degree in education. His professional versatility was extraordinary. In Illinois, he held the political offices of postmaster, township treasurer, and clerk. He also owned and operated a general store, a lumber yard, and a creamery. Talk about multitasking. He also owned and operated a general store, in between his teaching and business interests, he began to pursue a career in invention and recognized the need for technological solutions for access. But he did not separate himself from the context of the inventions. He recognized that devices that would facilitate learning for children who were blind, but he also knew that technology was only one avenue to learning. As superintendent of the Illinois School for the Blind, he promoted practical learning and physical education and encouraged students to develop the skills to interact with others. In his biographical materials, it was noted that he served 2 separate terms as superintendent of the Illinois Institution for the Education of the Blind. The first, from 1890 to 1893, was cut short because Hall was a Republican and a Democratic governor was elected. But he got his job back when the political administration changed again. And in the meantime, between his 2 terms, he became a principal in the public school. Perhaps the opportunity to work with both public and specialized schools influenced his recognition that public schools could be an option for students with visual impairments. Along with his inventions, he's also known as the first person to establish public school classes for students with visual impairments in public schools in Chicago. I wonder what he would say if he knew that now about 85 to 90% of our students with visual impairments are educated in public school settings. He believed that children learned as they were exposed to more sensory perceptions. He believed that children were not incomplete adults and that materials should not be simplified or taught in order of progressive difficulty. He was a thinker as well as a doer. Even in 1908, at age 67, when he completed his superintendency in Illinois, he continued to pursue new interests. He became the Illinois state delegate to the Farmers National Conference and the National Farmland Congress, and was a member of the National Conservation Commission at an age where many of us would have been lured into retirement. When we induct historical leaders to the Hall, I find myself imagining what it would be like to meet them in person. If Hall were still around, I think he'd be a fascinating conversationalist. At the AER conference, he would roam the new products. He would walk around to the social events, the policy meetings, and technology presentations. And at APH, he would have been eager to roam the new products display. He would know the names of many people and would be eager to talk and listen. And when presenters finished their talks, I'll bet when they said, "Are there any questions?" Frank's hand would have been up. His dignified mustache would have hidden a hint of a smile as he looked for opportunities to challenge accepted ideas. I am very pleased to welcome Frank Haven Hall to the Hall of Fame. Here to accept the plaque is Carl Augusto, retired CEO and president of the American Foundation for the Blind, who nominated Mr. Hall. Carl also bargained with me to give him a few extra minutes of time, so you see some things don't change after retirement. Carl, thank you very much, and I'll give you the plaque just a second.
Thank you. Are we supposed to stand for pictures?
Not too after, I think. Okay. And I'm pleased to present Frank Hall's plaque to
Ta-da.
Carl Augusto.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hold this?
Okay, go for it.
Thank you, Jane, and it's wonderful to be back here at APH and to see so many of my long-term and short-term friends. So it's great to be here. In many ways, Frank Hall doesn't fit the mold of the typical Hall of Fame honoree. He's not blind, didn't start in our field, didn't have a long career in the blind biz. For most of the first 25 years of his career, he was a teacher and administrator in public and private schools and had no experience working with blind children before his political appointment as superintendent of the Illinois Institution for the Education of the Blind. And that was in 1890 when Hall was 49 years old. He observed that the process of producing Braille through a slate and stylus seemed to be slow and arduous for some of his students. So he conceived the idea to invent a typewriter-like machine that would make the production of Braille faster and easier for some. He recruited a machinist by the name of Gus Siebert, who owned a gun shop in town, to produce a prototype. He suggested ways in which this kind of machine could work, and Gus Siebert did the rest. The Braille writer that was produced was a result of Hall's creative mind and Siebert's crafting expertise. Jane was right. No profits, no patent. Other similar machines had been built, but Hall's was considered superior and the first to be mass-produced. By 1911, over 2,000 Braille writers, Hall Braille writers, were being used. In 1892, he held a contest among 5 of his students using the Braille writer. Was that the first Braille challenge? Nancy? Also in 1892, he took his Braille writer, this is very interesting, to a meeting of the American Association of Instructors for the Blind. And the key organizers denied his request to demonstrate the Braille writer because they were proponents of New York Point over American Braille. So he invited participants to his room where his 19-year-old sighted daughter demonstrated the speed and the quality of his Braille writer. A year later, he developed a heavy-duty Braille stereotyper to produce multiple copies of Braille, and there's no evidence, even Michael Hudson says this, there's no evidence that anyone had done it before. So that's 2 inventions attributed to Hall. As superintendent, Hall was a strong believer that blind people should be trained to work and compete with their sighted peers. During his 2 terms as superintendent, he continued his progressive teaching methods to make the education for blind children as rigorous as it was for sighted children. And in 1900, the Chicago Board of Education planned to build a residential school. Well, he advocated instead that special rooms and equipment be provided in public school settings so that blind kids can attend regular classes alongside their sighted peers in their own neighborhood. Hall's plan was adopted by the board, and for the first time in the United States, blind children were integrated into classroom with sighted children on a large scale. The Board of Education also followed Hall's recommendation to hire John Curtis as the first supervisor of the program. John Curtis, too, is a pioneer, and who knows, he might be in the Hall of Fame someday. In 1902, Hall resigned and went to work for the Illinois Farm Bureau. Frank Hall was way ahead of his time. As Jane pointed out, he was a thinker and a doer and a technology innovator. And he did all of this in just 8 years as superintendent. So Frank Hall richly deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I can't miss this opportunity to salute Susan Spungin and her election to the Hall of Fame. Susan played such a pivotal role in my orientation to the American Foundation for the Blind and my learning about the educational system for blind children in this country. Susan, you've been a mentor to me and so many others. Congratulations, my friend. Back to you, Jane.
Thank you, Carl. And before I move on to talk about Dr. Spungin, I also want to acknowledge, I neglected to acknowledge that when I showed the slide of the board, the particular role that Tuck Tinsley has also played with the Hall, and now Craig Meador, and we very much appreciate the support of your executive, of the CEOs of APH, giving so much support and attention to the Hall and providing it with a home. So thanks, Craig and Tuck. Okay. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our second inductee to the Hall of Fame. It's difficult to limit my comments on Susan to 10 minutes, not only because of the enormity of her contributions, but also because of the quality of information available to me. She was nominated by Dr. Kathleen Hubner, who unfortunately could not be with us today due to illness, and our thoughts are with Kathy and hoping that she's healing well and will have a chance to view this video and when it is prepared, and also was nominated by Dr. Diane Wormsley. Letters of support were submitted by Dr. Kay Farrell and should be Dr. Natalie Hilson, formerly director of AFB Press. You can't imagine the challenge of consolidating the thoughts of four of the most eloquent professionals in our field into one 10-minute talk. Until I prepared this speech, I thought that I first met Dr. Spungin during my doctoral program at University of Pittsburgh. However, I learned from Dr. Wormsley's and Dr. Hubner's nomination letter that I probably met her during my master's program 10 years earlier. Diane and I were in the same class at Pitt, and in her letter of nomination, she described Dr. Spungin's visit to our class. She said, "Susan took the time to speak with each of us. I have a mental image of her enthusiastically chatting with us as if she had all the time in the world to give. She saw herself doing what she would do for her entire career, shaping the field, one individual and one problem at a time." Diane clearly has a better memory than I do, or maybe I skipped class that day. My only recollection of an AFB visitor during my master's program was Pauline Moore, a wonderful woman who advocated for students with multiple disabilities. But I only remember her speech because she told us about being mugged 3 times on the subways in New York. So much for long-term memory. My memory had apparently improved by 1982 because I vividly remember meeting Dr. Spungin Hankey at one of our first Josephine Taylor Leadership Institutes. I was a doctoral student then, and I attended the conference with fellow doctoral student Kay Farrell, who had a brand new PhD and was about to begin a job with AFB. When Susan came to the podium, Kay told me that she would be an extraordinary speaker, and Kay is never wrong. When Dr. Spungin finished her keynote speech to the conference, I was in awe. She was eloquent, thoughtful, and often funny. She delivered a message of strength and purpose that was unlike any other speech I had heard. For the first time, I understood that our profession reached far beyond my own community to the common experiences of people with visual impairment throughout the world. When I left the room, it was with a new belief in the importance of what we could achieve as a field. However, it was years before I understood how many other people were similarly encouraged by Dr. Spungin's ability to motivate and to inspire. Several years later, I was present at a meeting, I believe AER, where some disagreements had arisen between some members of the NFB and some AER professionals. When Dr. Spungin got up to speak, thoughtfully and with logic, the tension in the room began to ease palpably. Now, that was the scariest part. Could I pronounce palpably in a speech? There was a collective recognition that we were all working toward the same goals, even if our experiences varied. Susan has the extraordinary ability to bring individuals together to work toward a common goal. In fact, I'm rather hoping she might consider running for president in 2020. I don't know. Like many people in our field, Dr. Spungin began with a music degree. She arrived in San Francisco from New York in a Volkswagen Beetle, where she was told she was, in her words, underskilled and overeducated. She discovered Braille music while doing research in San Francisco, directed music programs for elderly people at the San Francisco Lighthouse, and met Georgie Lee Abel, completed the San Francisco Teacher Preparation Program, and became an itinerant teacher in Daly City schools. In 1967, she returned to the East Coast, where she became an educational counselor at New Jersey Commission for the Blind. She was hired by by AFB in 1972. Roseanne Silberman recalls that she introduced Susan to Roseanne's colleague Fern Roberts, and that Fern's husband Hank, then an administrator at AFB, learned about Susan from his wife. In the meantime, Susan completed her doctorate and her dissertation, which led to an important publication through AFB. The book Competency-Based Curriculum for Teachers of Visually Handicapped, which became the foundational work for educators in our field. In the words of Dr. Hubner and Dr. Wormsley, this publication was the first attempt to identify for the field the specialized skills that teachers of children with visual impairments needed, and it formed the basis of what should be included in teacher preparation programs. It was followed by numerous publications and guidelines for public school programs and competency-based curriculum. These were the beginning of Susan's chronology of writing that includes more than 80 publications. And during that decade, in her copious spare time, she also married and gave birth to twins. Between 1972 and her retirement from AFB in 2008, Dr. Spungin served in 8 different administrative roles, each one broadening her responsibilities and expanding her scope of skills. At her retirement, she was Vice President of International Programs and Special Projects. It is Dr. Spungin's skill as a leader and responsive listener that has made her invaluable in our profession. Dr. Farrell commented, if she was not the first to raise an issue, she was the first to clarify it. She stimulated discussion, and she made us all better by her forceful exhortations to take action. Drs. Wormsley and Hubner noted, through listening, she added to her knowledge of the problems facing the field. Susan was superb at selecting people who could help identify issues and suggest solutions. She has the courage to stand for her belief and see other perspectives. Her colleague Natalie Hilson mentioned, in her limitless availability to members of the profession, she provided guidance, inspiration, and direct encouragement to generations of leaders and service providers. Dr. Spungin has had leadership roles in almost every professional organization related to blindness and visual impairment. Secretary and Council of Division Chairs of AER, President of the New York Chapter, Chair of BANA, Vice President of the International Council for Education of the Visually Handicapped, and Treasurer of the World Blind Union. She was also on the original advisory board of this Hall of Fame and served as President of the Personnel Prep Division 17 of AER. Her international influence has extended to Europe, Eastern Bloc countries, Asia, and the Middle East. She served on the board of the World Blind Union, and as treasurer of that organization later, she is the only sighted individual ever to hold an executive office in World Blind Union. Her work has been honored with Miguel Medal from AFB, the Wings of Freedom Award from APH, and the Mary K. Bauman Award from AER, as well as more than 20 other awards and honors. Around the time of Susan's retirement, I was asked by Deborah Gold, editor of the then AER Journal, to interview Susan about her career and her retirement plans, and to write an article. One of the things I asked her was, which of your accomplishments has been personally most satisfying to you? She responded, this is a difficult question, but if I pushed, I would say the establishment of the National Association of Parents of Children with Visual Impairment. I also treasure my years with AFB under Bob Barnett, Gene Apple, Bill Gallagher, and Carl Augusto. And last but not least, my relationship with the National Federation of the Blind, especially Dr. Kenneth Jernigan, Mary Ellen Jernigan, and Dr. Mark Maurer. How very Susan-like it is to prize relationships and connections with people more than honors and publications. As an advocate, scholar, and leader, Dr. Susan J. Spungin-Hankey has motivated our profession to look beyond the present moment. She has provided a model for excellence, persistence, and planning for change. Her insights and accomplishments remind us that people who are blind or visually impaired and professionals can collaborate to ensure an improved quality of life. Dr. Spungin, it is with deepest pleasure that I welcome you as a 2018 inductee into the Hall of Fame, Leaders and Legends of the Blindness Field.
I need my, no, just leave it there, it's fine. I'm giving this a shot. The last time I said something of that ilk, I was with Bill Gallagher on a panel. And I apologized to the audience that I'd just gotten bifocals. And I wasn't really seeing very well. And Bill said, I wish I could say that. Thank you, Jane, for that beautiful introduction. Before I go any further, I would like to introduce you to my greatest project, and that's my children. Kids, when I call you, please stand up and stay standing. I will go by birth order. Dr. Jennifer Kehoe. Jennifer, my firstborn, was my practice child. And she taught me a great deal. Jessie J. Spungin and Meredith Spungin. These were the second child I was allowed to have and was not allowed to get until I finished my dissertation. So I guess I showed him. The grandchildren here are Sarah Janik, Michael Janik. No, he's not here. Kristen Janik. You may sit down now. Thank you. Unfortunately, the twins came early because they weren't to have come until I defended my dissertation. I didn't have much choice. So they've been wonderful and exciting. The boy twin, Jessie J. Spungin, should be here with his wonderful wife, Tracy Spungin, and their 6-year-old triplets, 2 girls and a boy, named Kennedy, Brooklyn, and Jesse J. Jr. But unfortunately, thanks to South Air, it screwed up. It's wonderful to hear the name of your conference, looking at the past and towards the future. It is somewhat based on my remarks as well as from the past to the present and in thinking about the future. This is my 37th annual meeting at APH, consecutively. So this is my 38th. In 1972, when I joined AFB, APH was one of my things I should attend. And I met Finus Davis, who was then CEO. It was a very small group. You all met over at APH. And during the entire time, mostly superintendents, but also others and guests and universities, there was a lot of, well, I won't say bitching, complaining about things that are, I suspect, still around. The book arrived in the wrong edition. What do you mean you're not going to have it ready for the beginning of the year? And so forth. But at the end of every Finest Davis annual meeting, he stood and he looked like such a Southern gentleman up in front of the group and said, "Now it's your turn to ask and give me questions and information of how the program's working." And I sat there and I said, "This is going to be fun." Not a word was said, which was my first indication that this field was frightened of showing anything about themselves to themselves and their colleagues, and frightened to be found out. Because later on, and I'll go into it later, the competency-based meeting was the first time all the universities had ever come together and ever met. Many of them had never met. Next, I worked with Carson Nolan, who at one point gave his presentation as a researcher on tape recording, slightly enhanced speed with Donald Duck's effect and all. He was a wonderful man. Next, I worked with Tuck Tinsley, my personal favorite, who himself spoke in rapid speech and really brought APH into the 21st century. I joined AFB in 1972 and worked 6 years for the following CEOs and or presidents. Bob Barnett, a character. It would take days to discuss the background. But he was the CEO who hired me. Loyal Gene Apple, very concerned about low vision. And his wife was very involved with large print. Bill Gallagher, who I think we all know and love. And then, of course, Carl, who said those lovely things about me. Thank you, Carl. And he's here, as you know, today. Close to 4 decades, I enjoyed the leadership of these great men. MEN. My mother always said that when doing something new, think of what's happened around you and think location, 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 and location. She was right. When I was hired at AFB in 1972 to be the specialist in education, I hit the ground running. President had come and gone, no, you go on, but Jackie Kennedy had a mentally retarded sister. And so he was the first to set up the Bureau of Education of the Handicapped and grants and money. And things really began to take off. When I went to AFP, I'll tell you my secret why I did so many things. Nothing had been done. Starting at ground zero is a very good place to begin. Now, I shouldn't say that because Georgia Lee Abel, my mentor, was there, but she was in San Francisco State. Polly Moore was there. Alice Senjo. But the publications that were coming out were such pamphlets as potty training for blind and visually impaired, the itinerant program, and the Pine Brook Report, which was about integrated education. So the first thing that occurred to me, since I knew nothing, was to organize myself and the field. Few were talking to each other in this wonderful field of ours, and it was my motivation to have that begin. Cosby was well on its way with hiring of many new superintendents, and to that I can say thank God. The Joe Taylor Conference helped a great deal to organize state vision consultants, as well as the instructional materials. There was one group that was the most difficult to pull together, and that was the university training programs. Because of all groups, they were the most scared group because they had no security in what they were doing. They thought everybody was better than them, and so they're just going to be silent. So it was at the right time, and now I'm going to sit down. It was the right time. At the right, can you get this on? You can hear, good. At the right time, the right place, when a book, you all may remember, came out called Why Johnny Can't Read. And it was a big hullabaloo that training programs were useless. So there was a mandate that all universities had to write their curriculum in a competency-based method, and that meant vision. So I pulled the university people, many of whom didn't know each other, together in Missouri and sat them down and locked the doors. And they wrote the competencies. And they were field tested, and the rest is history. Dr. Scholl helped a lot by holding a research conference at the University of Michigan, where we then and still are now, struggling with how to do research for a single group or few subjects. These groups, Cosby, State Vision Consultant, IMC, and universities, are still going, maybe with a name change and different priorities, but it makes me very happy that many of you are holding meetings at APH, CEC, and AERBVI. I could go on to list a few projects, such as the Braille Literacy Project, the Change a Code, etc., but rather I want to tell you the secret behind my success, and it had not much to do with me. Get good staff. Get good, talented staff, give them a job description, and then leave them alone. With their talents, good things always can happen. I'll give you a sample of the staff that I picked. Dr. Kay Farrell, Dr. Kathleen Huebner. I should be getting this award just for having those two under me. Alessandro, Dr. Corinne Kirchner, Alana Zamboni, Mary Ellen Mulholland, and for a short time, Natalie Hilson. Elliot Schreier, technology, and many, many, many more. So with that staff, how could I lose? The future in our field in my opinion, will be the integration and greater push for generic programs. Look how we train teachers now through distance education. We may have a need for teachers now, but will the school systems hire them? We say there's a shortage, but the school system doesn't want to spend money on one teacher for 2 kids or 1 kid. Why not bring the generic special educator and put them on their caseload? This is a very dangerous time. The constant among us that will grow and continue and be up for grabs are the severe multi-handicap population. Why? Because at least when I left, IDEA required you only have a primary disability. So if you were blind or low vision, but were retarded or cerebral palsy or whatever, you could only pick one. So our numbers started going down. Crazy world. Categorical programs for low incidence, such as we have now, I think is on a short leash. Instead of waiting and seeing, we need to work and create the future we want for our kids. So I thank you all very much for this incredible award, and to all my friends, new and old, who work with me. Thanks so much.